Hi, and welcome to our very first episode of the Lumani Unfiltered podcast and our YouTube channel. If you're watching my face right now, I'm Stephanie Lepre, founder of Lumani Health, and I can't tell you how excited I am to finally launch this. It's been such a passion project of mine for a really long time. I know how valuable your time is. Maybe you're driving, maybe you're folding laundry. Maybe you're hiding in the bathroom for a quick mental break. No judgment. Wherever you're tuning in, I thank you. I'm so grateful for your time. Today, I want to give you a real down to earth introduction of who I am, why I started Lumani, what you can expect from our upcoming episodes, and most of all, share some stories. At Lumani, we're all about bridging storytelling, sharing our own journeys, and then turning those stories into lessons that make all of our lives a little bit better. So let's get into it. I figure it's only fair to tell you a little bit about me first. I grew up in a suburb outside of Long Beach, California, Lakewood. My mom is Filipino and Hawaiian. My dad is French and Irish, hence Lepre, the accent. I grew up with several siblings. My house was always very full, a product of the 80s and 90s, so constantly playing outside, dinners in front of the television, just a very fall, fun household. My mom is a retired nurse, and my dad is a retired Navy reservist and an aerial photographer. I never thought that I would follow in my mom's footsteps for a lot of years. I thought that was the last thing I would do. I thought I would pursue my passions in music. Really wanted to be a Broadway star, played several instruments, and if I was perfectly honest with myself, wanted to do the farthest thing from following in my mom's footsteps. And ultimately found my calling and my passion and ended up being exactly what my mom was and is. And I'm so grateful. My mom, when I grew up, poured her heart into caring for other people. Nurses really see us at our best and our worst and somehow still believe in us. And that really ultimately became my passion throughout my 20 plus career. That spirit definitely rubbed off on me and my siblings, even if I resisted it as a kid. She had a lot of what we called Esterism when we grew up. Being in a partially Filipino household, I'm sure many of you can relate to this. Her remedy of choice was to rub Vicks on it whenever we had a cold or an ailment or just an upcoming sneeze, or we had a cabinet of antibiotics and never knew really what it was. And so even to this day, I'm pretty medicine adverse. I am probably the world's worst patient, which is not uncommon for a lot of health clinicians and practitioners out there. I really dislike taking medicine and pills. And not to say that's not a good thing to have medicine, just I think a product of my environment. I really have a thing about it. Professionally, I've done quite a few different things across my span of career. I started off as a pediatric ICU nurse, really gravitated towards taking care of the kiddos, and then really leaned into care coordination pretty early on in my career and gravitated towards caring across the spectrum and had that overwhelming feeling of wanting to take care of those communities that really were not able to find care for themselves. And so, for those of you who aren't familiar with care management, care coordination, It's really seeing how to access care at every entry point, whether it's insurance or physicians, understanding your medical bills. When you're in the hospital, you have a case manager. And so I really have had a passion for that my entire career. Now, I know you're curious about what we'll actually be talking about in the show. After chatting with many of you and reflecting on our own experiences, we've narrowed down the major topics our community cares about. We approach them through main storyteller lenses, primarily personal and raw. You'll hear a lot about my personal stories. I love a blend of other people's journeys and how we all connect. It's a way to make sure we're covering fun, yet deep and unfiltered truths. So let me give you a quick rundown. Number one, we'll talk about stress management and mental wellness. People are craving practical ways to handle stress, anxiety, and burnout. We'll share stories about medical gaslighting, for instance, when doctors dismiss your pain. If any of you caught my recent newsletter about the frustration of finding mental health support or finding a therapist, right? That shouldn't be that hard, right? Somehow it is. Number two, how about hormone health and balanced living? Hormones seem to mess with everything: energy, mood, even how we see ourselves. Yep. We've got a story literally called My Vagina Was Broken, if you caught that this week, all about menopause or postpartum and perimenopause. We talk about all the stuff nobody wants to hear about or warns you about, but definitely affects your daily life. We'll talk about nutrition and personal diets. We're talking about real food, real budgets, no fad diets. We'll cover things like the $2,000 mistake. Ever spent a fortune on a fancy diet that didn't work? Yep, that's something that we'll chat about. Ever spent a fortune on a fancy diet that didn't work? We'll learn from that. We'll talk about holistic fitness and body positivity. Think sustainable workouts that honor your mental health, not just quick fixes. We will cover a story that was really difficult for me to verbalize outwardly. Worst mom in the world. And a story of feeling guilty for not being able to do it all. I know many of you have been there, and I would really love to hear from you. We'll cover work-life integration and productivity hacks, like working remote versus hybrid work versus in the office. Those lines get really blurry, and how do we find balance? We'll talk about topics: 2 days in the ER. Just recently had a situation where a sudden health crisis throws your entire life upside down, and you realize you need a plan that factors in the unexpected. We'll talk about self-discovery and personal growth. That includes health scares and big life changes that often make us rethink everything. That we'll dive into relationship wellness and communication. Many of you have asked about the need for healthy communication with family, friends, and even our healthcare providers. Think about the idea of medical gaslighting. When the system or people in it just don't hear you. We'll talk about advocating for yourself and your loved ones. Moms face a ton of pressure to bounce back physically and mentally. We'll get real about postpartum realities, mental load, and how to find support beyond a quick pat on the back. How about sustainable and ethical living? People are linking healthcare choices to eco-friendly living and social responsibility. We'll chat about the big question: what if healthcare had a help desk? Imagine a simpler, more humane system that also thinks about sustainability. We'll talk about financial health and wealth mindset. Have you ever been blindsided by a giant medical bill? I know I have. We have stories like the $5,000 ambulance ride, and we'll dissect it so we can figure out how to avoid and handle these financial nightmares. Each of these topics ties back to why Lumani stands for bridging gaps in health knowledge, building empathy, and making real change. So let's talk about Lumani Health. At its core, Lumani is about bridging gaps in healthcare through education, empathy, and storytelling. Because honestly, real life stories hit home in a way facts and figures just don't. Lumani. So I started to wonder, how can I help people navigate all this in a way that's actually supportive? Not just practical tips, but also empathy and the chance to learn from each other's stories. Through my professional practice in care coordination and care management, I've heard hundreds, if not thousands, of unique patient journeys, as well as my own personal stories, where it just weaves through the care continuum. And I have learned so much along the way. And that's where I really have seen the seed for an opportunity. And that's where the seed for Lumani got planted. Let's get real. My biggest motivators are my daughters. They teach me something new every single day about resilience, love, how to laugh at myself, which is critical. They definitely teach me humility. And I want to build something that would not only help them, but also anyone else trying to juggle family, work, mental wellness, finances, you name it. All right, friends. So that's our kickoff. That was all about who I am, the worst patient ever, apparently, why Lumani exists, shout out to my daughters, and the push to fix a broken system, the 10 big topics you've been asking for, and how we'll tackle them through stories that are viral, personal, and raw. And I encourage you to comment, subscribe, and continue to share topics that you want to hear about in the future. If you're thinking, yes, I need to hear more about postpartum complications, negotiating medical bills, or avoiding diet scams like yesterday, then be sure to hit subscribe or follow this channel. Trust me, we're just getting started. In the next episode, we're going to talk about stress management and mental wellness because let's be honest, we're all dealing with some level of burnout. I'll share a couple of personal fails, like the time I tried to pretend everything was fine with my body and said, nope. And we'll explore ways to actually care for your mental health, even if you've been told to just deal with it. So join me, share this with a friend, and remember, your story matters. At Lumani, we believe when we share raw experiences, we don't just complain. We learn, we evolve, and we help each other do the same. Thanks again for being here, and I'll catch you in the next episode. So stay curious and advocate for yourself. Until next time, stay kind to yourself, okay? Bye.